I think one of the contributing factors to unnecessary angst and despair and discouragement is not understanding our location in Christ. You know, the real estate community has a mantra: location, location, location. Well, you can make a case that we do as Christians as well, or as Christ followers. You know that Paul says in the Lord, or in Christ, or in Him, or in whom, about 140 times in the New Testament in his writings. I think he's trying to get across to us something that is essential, that we are in Christ Jesus. That is our location. He says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, "Rejoice in the Lord always," not sometimes, always. And again, I will say rejoice. But notice how it's phrased. He doesn't say rejoice because of the Lord. I mean, you could, but he doesn't say that. He doesn't say rejoice because of all of our blessings. He could, but he doesn't. He says rejoice in the Lord. That's a location. That's interesting because Paul had spent jail time in the city that he's now writing, in Philippi, which is in Greece. Paul and Silas had traveled there, and they exorcised a young lady who had a spirit of divination, a psychic, and they cast the spirit. Paul cast that spirit out of her. Well, that got them in trouble, and they ended up getting put in jail, and they were in the innermost part of the prison, in stocks, held fast, guarded. The prison was dark and dank and damp. How's that for alliteration? And there they were, it says, in the midnight hour, singing praises to God. How can that be? Well, because even though their physical, earthly circumstances were pretty depressing, they were not moved by their external situation. They were rather moved by their inward location. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I will say rejoice. They rejoiced because of their place in Christ Jesus. I want to remind you, that's where you live. That's where I live. And the more our minds can be renewed to that reality, then the less the external circumstances can determine and dictate our moods. We are in Christ Jesus. He paid the price that we might now live in Him. Galatians 2:20 says, "I have been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in or of the Son of God, who loved me and delivered Himself up for me." So don't forget today, rejoice in the Lord, in your place in Christ Jesus. That's where you live. That's where we belong. I'm Richard Boatman. This has been 3 Minute Manna. Go with God, and God will go with you.